The bustling airport terminal buzzed with a cacophony of sounds, the shuffling of feet, the rolling of luggage, and the crisp, automated announcements of boarding calls. I felt a tug on my baseball cap from behind. Balancing the suspiciously acquired airplane beverage in one hand, I turned to face the culprit, the one person who could consistently raise my chronically low blood pressure. Vesper Blackwood, are you trying to give me a heart attack? It was the dead of winter, but Vesper, ever the dramatic one, wore a thin, black trench coat, unbuttoned to reveal a matching black shirt underneath. Today's accessory of choice was a pair of wire-rimmed glasses perched on his nose, giving him an air of intellectual mischief. He retracted his hand, looking down at me with that characteristic, infuriatingly superior air. Why are you playing third wheel to a couple on a romantic getaway? His chin lifted slightly, gesturing towards the figures of Lyra Sterling and Zephyr Vance up ahead. Zephyr was my cousin, Lyra my best friend. They were heading home for the winter break, and I, naturally, didn't consider myself an intrusion on their coupled bliss. Since when did you become the relationship police? He let out a soft, mocking laugh and plucked the paper cup from my hand. What is this garbage? Before I could even react, he tossed it into a nearby trash can and, gripping the back of my neck, steered me in the opposite direction. Whoa, Vesper. Seriously? My suitcase is with Zephyr. I craned my neck, trying to catch their attention. Lyra, with that uncanny best friend telepathy, turned. I blinked frantically at her, a silent plea for rescue. She simply smiled, a knowing, slightly amused glint in her eyes, and then, with blatant disregard for my plight, turned back and continued walking with Zephyr. Traitor. We descended into the underground parking garage via the elevator. Before I could even get my bearings, my vision was blocked by a hood pulled over my head. The notorious northern wind was even fiercer than the rumors suggested, and even in the semi-enclosed space of the garage, it sent a shiver down my spine. Vesper rested his elbow on my shoulder, securing the oversized hoodie that threatened to swallow me whole. Once inside the car, the small, enclosed space offered a welcome respite from the biting cold. I straightened my hair and rummaged through the glove compartment for snacks. Vesper got in and tossed my small backpack onto the back seat. "Oh, Mr. Blackwood, driving yourself today?" I said, tearing open a packet of biscuits. The scenery outside the car window began to blur as we drove. Vesper ignored my question, his voice dropping to a more serious tone. "About what I said to you a while ago. What are you thinking?" "What thing?" I was parched, my drink having been unceremoniously discarded. My words were followed by a stark silence. The realization of what he was referring to hit me, and I carefully retracted my hand, the crinkling of the biscuit wrapper sounding deafening in the quiet car. I glanced at him. The metal frames of his glasses accentuated the sharp lines of his face, creating a strangely harmonious, almost geometric composition. As we exited the parking garage, the bright daylight washed over him, giving his skin a subtle, luminous sheen. During the New Year holiday, Vesper had come to our university city on business. Just as he was leaving, he'd suddenly asked me if I wanted to date him. It was so out of the blue that I'd initially assumed it was some new, elaborate way of teasing me. I hadn't taken it seriously. "Are you serious?" He glanced at me, a hint of impatience in his expression. "Do I look like I have time for games?" "Oh, great. This attitude." "No." "Anya, think carefully before you answer." "Vesper, VS, I'm a vibrant 19-year-old. You're 25, almost 26. We practically have a generation gap between us. Besides, he was constantly acting like a child. The last thing I needed was another father figure. "You think I'm old?" He sounded genuinely surprised, followed by a cold laugh. "Yes. Zephyr said you have tons of people chasing after you. Go date one of them. We're not a good match." I inserted a straw into a carton of milk. "Are you jealous?" He studied me, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Why does Zephyr tell you everything?" I rolled my eyes, a subtle gesture I hoped he wouldn't notice. I leaned back against the seat, finding a comfortable position. "Please, don't flatter yourself." The winter. Sun streamed through the windshield, warming the interior of the car. I touched my face, feeling the heat from the sun and the car's heater. "Why? Wouldn't it be awkward?" Vesper steered the car through a green light just as it turned yellow. "Awkward how? We have a solid foundation of friendship, our family backgrounds are clear and compatible. Dating would make things less awkward." I sat up straighter, leaning closer to examine him. "Vesper, you're Asking me out, right? I cleared my throat theatrically. Then you need to adjust your attitude. Say something nice. Show some effort. And then, I'll consider it. His thin lips curled into a smile, his eyelashes fluttering. Anya, reaching for the stars, are we? He removed his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose. We have 40 minutes until we reach my office. I want an answer before we get out of the car. Office? Why are we going to your office? I sat up abruptly. The journey wasn't long, but I was still eager to get home, shower, and rest. He flicked the steering wheel gently. It's a work day. I want to go home. No one's home. How do you know? Before he could answer, the car's screen displayed an incoming call. He put on a single earbud, slowing down and maintaining a safe distance from the car in front. He murmured a few ahas and told the caller he'd be there in half an hour. I pulled out my phone. I'd been so distracted following Lyra and Zephyr off the plane that I hadn't turned it on. Only now did I see a message from my mother. She was working the night shift, and my father was away on a business trip. Vesper's mother was my mother's senior colleague. They'd worked together at the same hospital for over 20 years. Before Vesper started elementary school, his parents were too busy with work and didn't trust a nanny, so they sent him to live with his grandfather until he finished elementary school. I probably hadn't even finished kindergarten when I first met him. Given this massive age difference, I truly couldn't understand why he wanted to date me. So, have you thought about it? The harsh sunlight was directly in his eyes. Vesper put on a pair of sunglasses. If I don't, I began, but he cut me off. Concert tickets. Huh. Meet and greet passes. Our company is investing in a dance competition show next season. Do you know who's going to be on it? Of course, I knew. My two ultimate female idols were both participating. I cursed him silently. My luck, throughout my life, had been consistent. In exams, I always managed to scrape by with the bare minimum passing score, not a point more, not a point less. Every point was strategically utilized. But in other areas, I was less fortunate. I never won the free drink on bottle caps, always rolled the lowest number in dice games, and, most devastatingly for a dedicated fan, I could never manage to snag signed albums or concert tickets. Vesper, on the other hand, was freakishly lucky. He always won the most at card games. He'd skipped school in high school without ever getting caught. He'd managed to attend the only university class where attendance was taken, and when he started a company in his third year of university with a few of his childhood friends, it perfectly coincided with a major government policy change. They had no shortage of funding or connections, and with strong support and a novel approach, the company flourished within a few years. In the past, whenever I needed a dose of good luck, I'd always cling to him, hoping his ridiculously good fortune would rub off on me. But after he started university, he'd become less willing to help me with these trivial matters. Still, he always had connections and resources, getting me VIP seats at concerts, rare memorabilia, and all sorts of autographed albums, allowing me to live the happy life of a dedicated fan. So, was he threatening me now? Vesper, do you think it's appropriate for a grown man like you to threaten a young girl like me? He propped his chin on his hand and seemed to let out a soft chuckle. Young girl, he repeated, savoring the phrase. And what? Continue your speech. I'm listening. Ugh. I straightened my legs, staring at the tips of my sneakers. What benefits do I get from dating you? Honestly, I wasn't opposed to the idea of dating in general. I just hadn't considered it, especially not with Vesper. Benefits? As my girlfriend, you can, of course, freely exercise your girlfriend privileges. I'll listen to your opinions on matters big and small. You'll have someone in this world who legitimately cares for you and needs your care in return. You can tell me anything, rely on me. And of course, he chuckled, you can kiss me, hold my hand, hug me. Well, I'm open to anything you want to do to me. How about that? I think you're getting a pretty good deal. The first part sounded reasonable, but the rest. I felt my ears burning. I quickly finished the remaining milk. If he hadn't been driving, I might have thrown the empty carton at his face. The car entered a familiar underground tunnel, made a sharp turn, and smoothly slid into a parking space. Vesper switched back to his regular glasses and asked if I needed to grab my backpack from the back seat. I shook my head, too lazy to carry it. It was an awkward time of day around 1 p.m. People were either eating lunch or taking a nap. The elevator ascended smoothly without stopping. Vesper's arm wrapped around the back of my neck, his elbow resting on my shoulder. It looked like he was leaning on me, but honestly, I didn't feel any weight. He'd done this before, and it hadn't bothered me then, but now everything felt different. I felt he was too close. The faint scent of his laundry detergent mixed with another subtle fragrance, probably his aftershave, invaded my senses. Sometimes in the morning, this scent was a bit stronger. His body heat was pressed against mine, his breath was just above my head, and one of his hands dangled in my field of vision. It suddenly hit me. He was a man, a grown man. I stuffed both hands into my pockets and nudged his calf with the side of my sneaker. Stand up straight. You're heavy. I stared at the silver elevator doors, vaguely seeing our reflections. He straightened up slightly, but his hand remained on my shoulder. In the reflection, his face seemed to be turned towards me. I heard his laughter, a sound that made my ears itch, but he didn't say anything. The elevator was fast. The number 11 lit up on the right side of the elevator. He led me out of the elevator, and as we rounded the corner, two people approached us. A woman, impeccably dressed, with perfect makeup and hairstyle, was Juniper June Rivers, his executive assistant. The man, tall and well-proportioned, with a refined appearance, was someone I hadn't met before, probably a new recruit or someone Vesper had poached. One was holding a tablet, the other a stack of neatly arranged A4 papers. They both greeted Vesper as Mr. Blackwood. So, this was where he'd been held up. Vesper tapped my shoulder with his fingers and asked them, "Who's next?" June replied, "Director Lee." Vesper nodded. "All right." He patted my shoulder. "You go to my office first. The password hasn't changed." I nodded and, without lingering, headed towards the end of the corridor. Vesper's father had been involved in trade along the coast in his early years, dealing in a wide range of goods. In the 1990s, he gradually shifted his focus to real estate. Eventually, he transitioned entirely to real estate, so his family was never short of properties. This building was one of theirs, built about 20 years ago. The city center land wasn't as expensive back then, so it was built tall and wide. Vesper's company occupied 5 floors. In the middle, the rest were rented out. The top floors housed a law firm and an advertising agency, and the lower floors were a shopping mall, which even included a kindergarten. Vesper was generous with himself. He'd reserved an office with an excellent view and ample space. 2 walls were made of one-way glass, offering a panoramic view of the northwest part of the city. A tablet rested on the coffee table, and several computers were stacked on the formal desk. I took a quick glance around. I'd woken up too early that morning and felt a wave of drowsiness. I went into the inner bathroom, washed my face, took off my jacket, and buried myself in the comfortable-looking bed. I was drifting off to sleep when I sensed some movement nearby, but before I could fully register it, I sank into a deep sleep. Winter days were short. When I woke up, the sky outside was already tinged with a dark blue. I stretched languidly, letting out a series of yawns. I reached for my phone on the nightstand. There were several messages, from Lyra, my mother, my classmates, and Vesper. It was already past 5 p.m. He was still in a meeting. The message had been sent at 2:30 p.m., saying he'd ordered food for me and I should heat it up in the microwave when I woke up. I got up and went to the outer room. A plain brown paper bag sat on the desk. I messaged Vesper, asking when he'd be finished. The vibration of my phone and the click of the door lock sounded simultaneously. The office wasn't carpeted, so the faint, rhythmic sound of shoes against the polished floor was audible. "Awake?" Vesper's voice reached me as he came to the sofa and sat down beside me. He casually tossed his jacket onto the other side, opening 2 buttons at the top of his shirt, revealing a hint of his collarbone, where a small, dark mole was visible. I averted my gaze and poked his shoulder with my finger. Before I could speak, he said, "Wait 2 minutes and we'll go downstairs to eat. Think about what you want." Judging by his tone, I asked, "Do you have a lot of work?" "It's the end of the year. Summaries of old projects, evaluations of new projects, consolidation and calculation of abandoned projects. Plans for next year." Those 2 slackers ran off, so I have to oversee everything. It'll take another 2 or 3 days to finish. No wonder there were so few people in the cubicles and offices when we arrived at noon. They were all in all-hands meetings these past 2 days. The 2 slackers he mentioned were the other 2 major shareholders of the company, friends Vesper had known since elementary school. He'd probably stood them up too many times in the past, so they decided to retaliate together this time. Are you going to continue the meeting tonight? I asked. Yeah. Can you sleep alone at home? Why wouldn't I? He chuckled, a sound that held an ambiguous meaning. Even if you could, I don't have time to take you home. You can either stay in a hotel near here, or you can just stay here. Everything you need is here. He lifted his chin slightly, gesturing towards the inner room. I can go back by myself. That's not an option, he said, waving his left index finger. His annoying expression made me want to hit him. You said you'd listen to my opinions on matters big and small. Oh, so you agree to be my girlfriend then? The word girlfriend made me blush slightly, but before the blush could fully spread, he continued, so there's no way I'd let my girlfriend go home alone. He turned his face towards me, a half smile playing on his lips. I responded flatly, wow, you're so smooth. Is this the age difference and generation gap? I'm learning so much. He also retracted his smile, staring at me silently for 2 seconds. Then, he stood up, grabbed his jacket from the side, and pulled me up. Let's go. Time to eat. I ended up staying in his office that night. I had a slight psychological hang-up. I wasn't particularly fussy about most things, but I instinctively avoided things that I found off-putting, like hotel beds. No matter the rating, no matter how well the housekeeping was managed, the thought of many people having slept in them made me uncomfortable. If I had to stay in a hotel, I'd bring my own bedding. Perhaps because I'd slept all afternoon and then gone to bed early the previous night, I was awakened by a faint rustling sound in the outer room. Even though it was a small sound, I caught it and became fully alert. I got dressed. The bed was large, and I'd only slept on a small portion of it. The rest remained perfectly smooth. I pushed open the frosted glass door. Vesper was wearing a white shirt and black dress pants, standing in front of the mirror, tying his tie. He was wearing disposable slippers. From this angle, his waist looked incredibly narrow, his legs long. His back was slightly bent, the outline of his spine visible beneath the smooth shirt, suggesting a hidden strength. His shoulders, framed by the sharp lines of his suit, formed right angles. His hair, freshly blown dry, looked both smooth and slightly fluffy and soft. He was truly a contradictory individual. If he put on a tracksuit and walked into any university campus, he wouldn't look out of place. But after graduating, he'd adopted the full adult man. Uniform of shirts, suits, ties, watches, and leather shoes. It had integrated seamlessly with him, not making him look out of place, but rather giving him the air of an excessively youthful man. He saw me in the mirror. I yawned. He smiled. Did I wake you? I leaned against the doorframe, shaking my head. How did you sleep last night? How else? With my eyes closed. His slender fingers moved deftly, pulling the tie knot up to the top button of his shirt, adding a certain, indescribable quality. Oh, I thought you slept with your eyes open. My voice was nasal from oversleeping, making my words sound less than intimidating. His phone vibrated on the counter, a jarring sound in the quiet room. He rummaged through a cabinet, found a new toothbrush, rinsed it with hot water, squeezed toothpaste onto it, and handed it to me. He pinched the back of my neck. Eat breakfast after you wash up. He turned and left the room. Soon, his voice, slightly muffled, could be heard from a distance. He was on the phone. Breakfast was probably takeout from the restaurant downstairs, a mix of Chinese and Western dishes, soy milk, steamed buns, siu mai, milk, bread, and sandwiches. Fortunately, the portions were small, almost miniature. I picked at the nuts on a slice of bread with my chopsticks. Vesper took a sip of coffee from a porcelain cup. I'm going to the airport later. I'll drop you off at home first. I looked at him, puzzled. Aren't you supposed to be at the company these past few days, overseeing the year-end summaries? Business trip? He nodded, tearing open a small packet of fruit jam and placing it beside me. There's a foreign client who happens to be in Guangdong these past few days. They moved up the post-holiday plan, so I have to go. Sparrow will oversee things here. Sparrow was one of his close friends and a partner in the company. His name was Zhang or Huan, but somehow they'd nicknamed him Sparrow. He'd majored in law and computer science in university and was considered the technical consultant of their little group. I silently complained, people who think about work while they're out having fun are crazy. He laughed. Yeah, and calling at midnight to schedule a meeting? That guy's an idiot. When I received Vesper's message, I was having Thai food with my mother at an underground mall. I'd gotten into the habit of keeping my phone on silent during classes, so I didn't see the message until half an hour later. He said he'd landed. I replied, "Father knows." Then, silence. My mother had originally planned to go shopping with me in the afternoon, a rare mother-daughter outing. But the hospital was experiencing a small peak in patient flow before the holiday, and she couldn't get away. I looked at her without saying anything. My mother initially felt a bit guilty, but my acting skills failed me, and I couldn't help but laugh. She gave me a withering look and told me to either go to my grandmother's house that evening or come to the hospital, and she'd take me out to dinner. Half an hour later, I was belting out high notes with Gemini and Willow, trying to outdo each other. We turned, Shanghai Tibet Plateau, into a death march. Gemini was jumping on the sofa in the private karaoke room, trying to imitate the hair-flipping moves of our favorite female idol. Willow was yelling into her phone at her boyfriend, rolling her eyes, and generally ignoring us. We left the karaoke place, all in one piece, our throats slightly hoarse. When we ate dinner at my grandmother's house that evening, they thought I had a cold. I drank cold medicine, ginger tea, and pretended plain water was vodka, downing 2 glasses. I belatedly realized I'd forgotten something. Rain began to fall outside, a gentle patter. My phone screen flickered nearby. I swiped to answer. It was a video call. Vesper's hair was wet, and he was rubbing it with a black towel. His long fingers were barely visible amidst the towel and his hair. Warm light illuminated his face, and he was smiling. "What are you staring at?" I asked him, enunciating each word clearly. "Vesper Blackwood, don't tell me you're still in the bathroom." It wasn't unreasonable for me to think so. There were faint water droplets on the glass behind him, blurring his image. His exposed neck didn't show any signs of a collar or anything similar. He laughed. "Anya, I didn't realize you were so shy." "Shy, you," I started to say, but he interrupted. His background shifted. The hair on his forehead was slightly messy from the towel, momentarily resembling the way he looked in high school after coming off the basketball court, casually running a hand through his hair. "I just came in to get a towel." Such a big reaction. He seemed amused, the curve of his lips unwavering. "Which eye of yours saw me having a big reaction?" The camera moved, pulling back. He was still smiling, revealing the gray t-shirt he was wearing. "See? Anya, are you hinting that you want to see me shower?" "Yes, take it off." "I'm watching." I nodded solemnly. His smile faltered for a split second, then immediately returned. "Girlfriend, you're a little impatient, aren't you?" A hint of a canine tooth peeked out. "You take it off. I'll record a video for you." To ease the longing, he asked slowly, his voice rising at the end. "No. I want to make you famous and then get your account banned." He laughed again. "I won't tease you anymore. What did you do today?" Judging by the background, he seemed to have sat down. His hair was slightly tousled from being dried. "Today? I had lunch with my mom, went to karaoke with Gemini and Willow, and now I'm at my grandfather's house." "Aren't you going to sleep?" We didn't talk for long. He seemed genuinely busy. He said there were some changes to their proposal, and they had to have an online meeting that evening. After hanging up, I noticed that his contact name in my phone was a rather unflattering word, fitting his personality. I tapped my finger on the screen, remembering his face, which remained flawless even from various unflattering angles. I changed his contact name to Girlfriend. For the first decade and a half of my life, my days were filled with studying, friends, food, entertainment, movies, TV shows, novels, magazines, and all sorts of mental nourishment. I rarely devoted any mental energy to thinking about my own love life. After starting university, my parents, friends, and everyone around me urged me to explore that area, but I'd simply listen and then forget about it. I had a laissez-faire attitude towards such matters. If it happened, it happened. If it didn't, it didn't. My unexpected relationship with Vesper didn't bother me, but I was having trouble adjusting to this shift in our dynamic. I didn't know how to interact with him in this new capacity. Although Vesper never acted particularly serious in front of me, the age difference between us was undeniable. In my mind, he remained a somewhat elder figure. When he said he wanted to develop that kind of relationship with me, after realizing he was serious and not just teasing, for some reason, I didn't want to refuse. But now, I didn't know how to behave. Vesper returned 2 days before the spring festival. By that time, my parents were already on holiday. Friends and relatives were starting to visit, keeping them busy, and, consequently, keeping me busy as well. He called me while I was being besieged by children. I was holding a baby who couldn't walk yet, and two little girls were clinging to my legs, wanting to show me their drawings. "Auntie, your phone is ringing." I managed to reach for my phone with one hand, still a bit dazed when I saw the words "girlfriend" flashing on the screen. When I answered the call, Vesper's voice came through. "Are you home now?" Before I could answer, the baby in my arms started to cry. I quickly stood up, comforting her while replying to Vesper, "I'm at my uncle's house." "You're back?" "Yeah. Why is it so noisy there?" Despite the chaotic scene, my mind uncontrollably conjured up the image of the person on the other end of the line. He was probably dividing his attention, half on the phone call, the other half on driving, walking, or something else. His face would likely be wearing that characteristic, slightly indifferent expression. "I'm babysitting," he teased. "You know how to babysit?" "Of course. Let me count. I have 5 kids surrounding me. My ears are about to fall off. Get downstairs in 10 minutes. "Why?" "To meet, to eat." "What else?" "Your boyfriend's been away on a business trip for so long, and you haven't shown any concern." I was speechless. My left arm was numb. I carefully sat down on the sofa. My little niece had tiny tears clinging to her eyelashes. "Vesper Blackwood, I am deeply impressed by your thick skin." He let out a soft laugh. "I hope next time you'll be impressed by something else of mine." After hanging up, I handed the ticking time bomb in my arms to my cousin. He'd just come back from playing basketball with his friends and had taken a shower. He was still a bit dazed when he received the finger-biting niece. I shook my arm, informed my mother, and prepared to leave. Throughout my childhood, my mother never said much when I went out with Vesper and his friends. One reason was that she was busy, and she was happy to have someone watch the kids. The other was that Vesper maintained a decent facade in front of parents and elders. They had a strange, unwavering trust in him. From a distance, I saw that Vesper had changed cars again. I was a bit speechless, seeing the silver-gray sports car parked by the roadside and its rather ostentatious license plate. I opened the car door. Vesper was looking down at his phone. Hearing the sound, he turned his head. That was fast. Long legs. I handed him 2 winter jujubes I'd snuck from the table. "Eat these. They're very sweet." He took them. My free hand involuntarily squeezed my arm. The chubby little niece was cute, but she was also genuinely heavy. "What's wrong?" Vesper lowered his eyelashes. I held my niece all afternoon. My arms numb. Delicate. He held the jujubes in his mouth and used both hands to massage my arm. His grip was stronger than mine, but it was effective. I could clearly feel my arm becoming less sore. The interior of the 2-seater car was even smaller. The car was parked by the roadside. This area was close to private residences, and during this festive holiday, there were few people around. Under the vast sky, it felt like it was just the 2 of us. I suddenly felt inexplicably shy, retracting my hand. "That's enough." He looked at me silently for a couple of seconds, didn't say much, blinked slowly, returned to his seat, and started the car. The car was definitely heading west. Outside the transparent windshield was a vast expanse of orange-red sunset, contrasting with the streetlights that were starting to light up. It was the city's most beautiful sunset hour. I'd initially assumed it would be just Vesper and me having dinner that evening, but he brought me to a large private room in a hotel. 5 or 6 people were already seated around a circular table, with 2 empty seats reserved directly opposite the door. As soon as we entered, waiters began to serve the dishes. Vesper was immediately teased by them upon entering, saying he was putting on airs and had kept them waiting. Vesper took off his jacket, draped it over the back of his chair, and sat down, laughing and cursing at them. I had a rough idea of who they were. Vesper had always been drawn to various adrenaline-pumping activities, especially racing. After he came of age, he'd invested in some racing clubs. The person sitting opposite me seemed to be a fairly popular race car driver in the domestic market in recent years. During the summer, Vesper had taken me to watch one of their races. Vesper chatted with them while keeping an eye on the dishes on the table, occasionally placing some onto my plate, mostly things I liked. I patted his hand. He leaned closer. "Don't put any more on my plate. I can't finish it. Eat first. We'll deal with the leftovers later." He'd been drinking, and his breath carried a faint scent of alcohol. His complexion hadn't changed much, but a closer look revealed a slight redness at the tips of his ears. Is this wine that good? I looked at the glass in front of him, the golden liquid reflecting the light. He propped his elbow on the back of my chair, turning his head towards me. At this point, shouldn't you be telling me to drink less? Perhaps because of the alcohol. Vesper's eyes were dark and bright, his eyelashes fluttering like butterfly wings as he blinked. This guy's face was truly flawless. Seeing you all drinking so enthusiastically, I want to try it too. I looked at the wine glass. He seemed a bit speechless, patting my head. Try what? It's not good. Then why are you drinking it? I've only had beer and alcoholic beverages before. They all say beer is delicious, with a weed aroma. I've never tasted it. What kind of wine is this? It looks beautiful. My outstretched hand was intercepted by him midway. This wine will give you diarrhea. Drink your beverage. I'll just have one sip. I held up one finger. He glanced at me sideways. Not even half a sip. Why don't you just let her have some if she wants it? The woman sitting next to me suddenly spoke up. I'd noticed her the moment I entered, for the simple reason that she was the only other woman at the table besides myself. She was strikingly beautiful, with a radiant, almost incandescent quality, but she spoke very little, only occasionally letting out a soft laugh. She seemed somewhat aloof, and I hadn't dared to approach her. Vesper's tone was flat. And if she wants to fly to the moon, should I build her a ladder? That jerk, Vesper, making me lose face in front of this gorgeous woman. I kicked him under the table. He pressed down on the back of my neck, forcing my head back towards the table. Eat. They didn't actually eat much of the meal, mostly focusing on their conversation. By the time we finished, it was already past 10 p.m. While we were saying goodbye to the others, Vesper seemed perfectly normal. He could talk and laugh, and he walked steadily. But as soon as we turned our backs and headed towards the parking spot, his true colors emerged. He suddenly seemed to have difficulty standing upright, leaning heavily on me, his arm draped over my shoulder. Come on, Vesper, don't pretend. Stand up straight. I pushed at his shoulder, trying to prop him up, but he kept leaning down, clearly doing it on purpose. He'd started sneaking sips of watered-down vodka from the corner store with his friends in elementary school, and by middle and high school, he was toasting with adults at the dinner table. I didn't believe for a second that this was his alcohol limit. Vesper, if you keep acting, I'm leaving you here. He was like a bottomless tumbler, requiring both hands to keep him from collapsing. He rested his face on my shoulder, his breath brushing my ear. Carry me. What? I doubted whether I'd heard him correctly. Carry me on your back. Get serious, BS jerk. You, a grown man, want me, a weak woman, to carry you? Are you not embarrassed? He chuckled at that. Embarrassed? My skin is pretty thick. I looked at him, speechless for a moment. Are you really drunk? I don't believe it. He looked at me, nodding seriously. I felt an urge to kick him. I wrapped one of his arms around my back and bent over, tugging at his arms. Only this once, okay? I tried to lift him, but this time, his lower body was firmly planted. He didn't budge. I turned back to see what new trick he was pulling. Before I could get a clear view of his face, he pulled me into a hug, my face pressed against his chest. Through the thin fabric of his shirt, I could almost feel the texture of his skin, its warmth, and the rise and fall of his breathing. Anya, why are you so silly? His voice came from above, laced with laughter, causing a subtle vibration in his chest. My ear was muffled by his arm, making his words sound hazy. I knew it. He was faking. I pushed him away forcefully, glared at him, and started walking. He leisurely caught up, grabbing the hood of my jacket and dragging his feet behind me. Why are you running so fast? Winter break always felt fleeting, nothing compared to the seemingly endless summer vacation. During this winter break, besides attending a bunch of gatherings, babysitting for half a month, binge-watching 2 dramas, reading 5 novels, visiting relatives, and exploring the surrounding area, I didn't seem to have accomplished much else. Oh, right. I'd also changed my status and acquired a boyfriend. On the day I returned to school, Vesper was away on a business trip, so busy he only managed to call me twice. As usual, I traveled with Lyra and Zephyr. Lyra, ever the loyal friend, wasn't one to prioritize romance over friendship. During the return trip, she sat with me, and we watched an anime together to pass the time. I hadn't kept my relationship with Vesper a secret from her. But when I told her, she didn't have any particular reaction, just smiled, as if completely unsurprised. I pressed her for an explanation, and she finally said she'd guessed it all along, that it was to be expected. When I pressed further, she gave me a cryptic 8-word response. It can only be understood, not explained. Mysterious. The two of them dropped me off at my dorm and then headed back to their own school next door. While I was hanging laundry on the balcony, I saw their figures, both wearing matching light gray tops and light blue jeans. They were both tall and slender, their steps seemingly synchronized. The sunlight fell perfectly behind them. I put down my laundry, took out my phone, and snapped a picture, sending it to Lyra. So perfect. My cousin and my best friend, a match made in heaven. Shortly after returning to school, before I'd even shaken off the holiday mood, the student union started bustling with preparations for the traditional spring sports meet. I was a department head in the student union, and for these kinds of events, I was essentially free labor, a long-term worker. If anything came up, I couldn't escape. That evening, after finishing the inventory and registration of the supplies needed for the sports meet the next day, it was already 8:30 p.m., not too early, not too late. A group of student union members decided to go out for dinner. Thea and I were in the same year and also department heads. I linked arms with her, and we walked at the back of the crowd, chatting. A younger student, walking backward in front of us, came up beside us. The student, named Kalen, was a freshman last year. When he'd applied to the student union, his 1-inch, blue background photo had been so stunning that it had been circulated among the senior female student union members, making him our organization's mascot. Of course, he was even more of a workhorse than us, constantly being summoned by the president for any task. He was said to be a magnet, attracting work wherever he went. Kalen slowed down to match our pace and tapped my shoulder. Senior Anya, they're saying we're going for Sichuan food. You love spicy food, aren't you happy? Honestly, I wasn't very close to him, and I didn't appreciate this kind of casual physical contact. I subtly nudged Thea to the side, creating some distance. Haha, Sichuan food again? Should we try the devilishly spicy option this time? You cried last time you tried the extra spicy level. You still dare to try it. Haha, life is about constant experimentation, right? The more you try, the more seasoned you become. I smiled in response, silently thinking, whether I cry or laugh from the spice, it's none of your business. Thea mocked me from the side. Anya, you're the classic example of all talk, no action. You were red-faced from the spicy snail noodles at Canteen 3 the other day, and you're still bragging. You're no better. Let's not have the pot call the kettle black. I was grateful to her for smoothly joining the conversation. This junior, though good-looking, really wasn't my type. I found some of his actions and words a bit off-putting. Maybe it was just my problem. If someone was within my circle of acquaintances or friends, I wouldn't mind them teasing or criticizing me. But when someone I barely knew started commenting on my habits or making small, physical gestures, I felt uncomfortable. The 2 tall buildings of the girls' dormitories were near the school gate. The path we'd chosen went around the dorm entrance. It was already dark, and in the dimly lit areas where the streetlights didn't reach, couples were huddled together, sharing secrets only they knew. Thea and I exchanged knowing glances, both silently agreeing. You should find a boyfriend, I said, nudging her arm. I'm waiting for him to fall from the sky and land on me. Pathetic. I laughed at her. Watch your words. Don't mock us single dogs. She playfully locked her elbow around my neck. I leaned back, using her strength to walk. I was enjoying the moment. The junior spoke again. Senior Anya, are you not single? I straightened up, glancing at him. Yes, I have a boyfriend. Since when? Do I know him? Is he from our school? He immediately followed up with questions. I was starting to get truly annoyed. I really wanted to say we're not close, buddy. Why are you asking so many questions? Are you taking a census? I'm a senior. I need to act like a senior. I gave myself a pep talk. You don't know him. He's not from our school. I averted my gaze, trying to end the conversation. Oh, crap. My heart skipped a beat. The figure standing under the streetlight at the bicycle parking area looked a lot like Vesper. Thea, lend me your glasses. I took off her glasses. Through the lenses, my vision became much clearer. It was him. Who are you looking at? My boyfriend. I returned her glasses, answering unconsciously. Really? I've only seen pictures. I've never met him in person. Let me see. Come on, I'll take you for a closer look. I pulled her arm, walking towards him. Whoa, why are you dragging me? I'm not going. I didn't know why either. Although I hadn't seen Vesper in person for over a week, I suddenly felt a wave of shyness. I also felt a bit lost, unsure of what to say. Dating is strange. If it had been before, I would have simply snuck up behind him and playfully punched him. How carefree that would have been. When I looked over, Vesper's face was turned towards us as if he were making eye contact with me. Spring had long since arrived, but the mornings and evenings were still chilly. Vesper, as always, hadn't forgotten to put on a show. He was only wearing a loose-fitting white shirt, his black jacket draped over his arm. I was wearing a thick hoodie and still felt a chill on my back. Thea broke free from my grip halfway there. Vesper didn't move, standing in place with his arms crossed, a half-smile on his face as he watched me approach. His hair had grown a bit longer. When the wind blew, it curved slightly. The hem of his white shirt also fluttered in the breeze. The pale light of the street lamp illuminated his features, making them sharp and defined. If my vision hadn't been so poor, I would have sworn I could see the shadows cast by his eyelashes under his eyelids. He simply watched as I walked towards him, step by step. I didn't know what to say as a first greeting. My mind blanked, and I instinctively grabbed his hand, checking its temperature. The lowest temperature. Today is 10 degrees Celsius. You're dressed pretty lightly. Aren't you cold? His hand was neither too warm nor too cold, so he probably wasn't cold. I was about to let go, but he tightened his grip, holding my hand. You, trying to run away after taking advantage of me, Anya? He chuckled. His words completely shattered the image I'd had of him in my mind a moment ago. This guy was the epitome of shamelessness. Before I could speak, the president and the rest of the student union group arrived, all of them a boisterous bunch, making ew and ah sounds. Anya? Introduce us. The head of the publicity department had a gossipy expression, his gaze darting between me and Vesper. Before I could open my mouth, Vesper wrapped his arm around the back of my neck, resting it on my shoulder. He put on that polite but soulless expression, his gaze quickly sweeping over the group. Perhaps it was my imagination, but he seemed to linger briefly on Kaylin. Did Vesper also find him handsome? I'm Anya's boyfriend. My last name is Blackwood. Vesper was certainly good at putting on an act in front of strangers, looking both dignified and intimidating. The guys teased, calling him Brother Blackwood and inviting him to join us for dinner. Vesper smiled politely, a faint, shallow smile. I have some things to take care of. You all have fun. Enjoy your meal tonight. It's on me. And thank you all for taking care of Anya at school. He gently patted my shoulder. After saying that, he tilted his head slightly to the left. Someone quickly got out of a car parked in the shadows and approached us. Liam, go with them, pay the bill, and then go straight back to the hotel to rest. Liam nodded. Yes, Mr. Blackwood. Then, I'll take Anya with me now. It was a question, but it didn't sound like one at all. The student union members were all about whoever was paying for the meal. They all smiled and said thank you, not a single person objecting. Judging by their expressions, they even seemed eager for me to leave. After the crowd dispersed, I asked Vesper if he'd eaten. He shook his head, saying he'd just gotten off the plane. He rummaged through his jacket pocket and eventually pulled out a box of cookies with foreign writing on the packaging, handing it to me. Then you could have just joined us for dinner. I knew he didn't like eating with people he didn't know, especially my classmates, but I felt a slight urge to tease him. He pushed me towards the inside of the campus. I only have tonight. Why waste it on them? Aren't we going to eat? Why are we walking into the school? I turned back to ask him. Let's eat at the cafeteria. Cafeteria? At this hour, only 2 self-operated canteens are still serving food, and it's not very good. Can you handle it, Princess Vesper? What do you mean, can I handle it? Speak properly. We're eating at the cafeteria. I couldn't understand what he was up to. Although Vesper seemed indifferent to most things, his family background and being spoiled by his grandparents as a child had made him quite picky. I took him to Canteen 4, which was more expensive and had a better environment. It mostly consisted of outside vendors, offering a wider variety of dishes. When we arrived, we found that there were still quite a few people, mostly those who had missed dinner or were out for a late-night snack. We ordered a dry pot, a plate of steamed dumplings, and a bowl of soup. The food tasted average, neither particularly good nor bad. I was genuinely hungry and focused on eating. Vesper sat opposite me, slowly picking at his food. You said earlier that you only have tonight. Are you leaving tomorrow? I remembered what he'd said on the road. Yes, I'm going on a business trip. I'm stopping by here for one night as a layover. As he spoke, he placed a peeled shrimp in my bowl. I wanted to say that it was too much trouble, but I didn't. A certain part of my heart felt a little fluttery. Vesper put down his chopsticks, wiped his hands with a napkin, and asked with a smile, "Hey, don't we look like those on-campus couples?" I followed his gaze and saw that several tables around us were occupied by pairs of male and female students. Vesper's hair had been slightly messed up by the wind earlier. Under the lights, it looked fresh, dry, and smooth. He did look young, but the contours of his face were sharper and more defined than those of the college students, and there was a subtle, almost imperceptible air of arrogance in his eyes and brows. I smiled. Don't pretend to be young. He retracted his smile, frowning slightly as he looked at me. Am I really that old? Oh, crap. My heart skipped a beat. I wouldn't have hurt his pride, would I? I quickly tried to salvage the situation. No, you're not old at all. The undergraduate students admitted to our school last year included people older than you. You're in your prime. I was just kidding. Besides, why compare yourself to them? You're not those girls' boyfriend. His expression didn't change, but the corners of his lips moved slightly. Oh, what about that guy today? Which guy? He reluctantly, after a long pause, finally spoke. The one wearing the blue shirt. Blue shirt. I thought for a long time, reviewing the student union members in my mind, before realizing he was probably referring to Kalen. I was puzzled. Why are you asking about him? Everyone thinks he's handsome. Do you think so too? I find this person a bit strange. Slightly annoying. If he didn't call me senior and wasn't a junior in my department, I really wouldn't want to deal with him. Vesper's eyelashes lifted slightly. I don't think he's particularly handsome. I was just asking. I silently scoffed at him. You don't think he's handsome, yet you specifically brought him up. You have too much time on your hands. Why didn't you just call me earlier? You just waited there. What if we'd missed each other? I sent a message to Zephyr. No wonder Lyra had asked me about my plans for the evening. It must have been Vesper asking her through Zephyr. Why didn't you ask me directly? Surprise. To catch you off guard. I laughed out loud. Vesper, you're quite childish, aren't you? He tilted his head slightly, as if he didn't want to look at me. After dinner, we strolled around the campus. When I picked up my phone, I saw that Thea had sent me several messages. She said that Liam had gone to the restaurant with them and opened a membership card for the president, with enough money on it for them to eat 2 meals with twice the number of people. She also said that they were discussing Vesper at the table, from his watch to his car, and even commenting on Liam's attire and demeanor. I was a bit speechless. The sleeves of Vesper's shirt were a bit long today, covering his wrists, so I hadn't even seen his watch. Perhaps the sleeves had ridden up when he'd put his arm on my shoulder, revealing the watch face. As for the car, he was on a rushed business trip with a short layover, so it was hard to say whose it was. And the corner was so dark, I couldn't even see the license plate clearly. What are you looking at? Vesper tilted his head and asked. I had indeed been staring at my phone screen for an excessive amount of time. Vesper wouldn't care about these things, and I didn't want to talk about them, finding them boring. But since he'd asked, I chose something easy to say. They said that Liam gave them a membership card with enough money to eat several meals. He truly didn't care. Then let them eat. Treat them to a few more meals. It'll help you build some goodwill. I buy them snacks quite often, too. That's different. After tonight, everyone in your department who knows you will know you have a boyfriend, and I doubt anyone will dare to pursue you after that. His lips curled into a smile. I was baffled. No one's pursuing me now either. You never know, he said in a low voice. When I pressed him further, he changed the subject again. Does your dormitory have a curfew? I shook my head. No. He looked down at me. I booked a suite. Stay with me tonight? I'll drop you off for class tomorrow morning. He added in a low voice, I'm a bit busy this month. I don't know when I'll be able to see you next. I looked at him, wanting to say, would you make your early flight if you dropped me off? It's a bit of a distance from here to the airport. He suddenly patted my head. Don't worry. I won't do anything you don't want me to. He actually thought of that. I felt my face flush. No, I was just thinking, would you make your flight if you dropped me off? It's a bit far from here to the airport. He held my wrist, leading me towards the school gate. Then we'll just get up earlier. When we reached the hotel, we swiped the card and entered. Vesper had indeed booked a suite. I looked at Vesper, who was casually tossing his jacket onto the sofa with a hint of suspicion. He took a bottle of juice and a bottle of purified water from the cabinet and handed them to me, patting the back of my head. What's with that look? Which room do you want to sleep in? Vesper opened the doors to both bedrooms. The difference between the master and the secondary was obvious. One faced east, the other south. Can I sleep on the sofa? I patted the black leather sofa I was sitting on. It was wide and long enough for me to sleep comfortably. Spoiling you. He unbuttoned the top 2 buttons of his shirt, rolled up his sleeves, and entered the bedroom. He soon emerged with 2 gray sheets and pulled me up, spreading them evenly on the sofa. With his back to me, he muttered softly, "I swear, I'm acting like both a father and a mother." He was wearing a pair of black, slim-fitting dress pants, making his legs look long and straight, all the way down to his ankles, exposed by the low-heeled hotel slippers. When he bent over, the hem of his shirt rode up, revealing the outline of his slender, firm waist. I averted my gaze. "Where did you get these sheets?" "Stole them." I couldn't help but laugh. "You're pretty impressive then." The air conditioner was on in the room. Vesper turned it up 2 degrees, then stood up and led me out the door. "Come on, let's go buy some things." There was a shopping mall next to the hotel. We strolled around leisurely for a couple of rounds, buying some toiletries. Vesper also took me to choose some snacks. This guy was truly picky, not only for himself but also influencing those around him to be particular. The snacks he chose were either labeled organic or were overpriced and didn't live up to their names, all adhering to green and healthy standards. But I always felt they lacked their original soul. Back at the hotel, I felt no sleepiness whatsoever. I showered before Vesper and, feeling even more awake afterward, poured myself half a glass of water and sat on the sofa, choosing a movie on the TV. Only the floor lamp was on in the room, making it somewhat dim and quiet. I assumed Vesper had already gone to sleep. I muted the TV, intending to use it as my sleep aid. A few minutes later, I heard the click of the door opening. Vesper emerged, rubbing his hair with a towel, wearing a set of all-black cotton pajamas. Still not asleep? In the dim room, his voice sounded unusually low and unusually gentle. I involuntarily lowered my own voice in response. "Not sleepy yet. I'm watching a movie." He tilted his head to look at the TV screen and came over, sitting beside me. I shared half of the blanket with him, covering his legs. He'd just showered, and his body exuded a faint warmth. After a couple of minutes, he went into the room and returned with a tablet, wearing earbuds. I looked at him, puzzled. He said he had some work to finish. After that, we sat side by side, he working, me watching the movie. The movie was a Western road trip romance. The leads were attractive, but the plot was rather monotonous. I didn't know when I drifted off to sleep. The next morning, I regained consciousness when Vesper patted my head. I opened my eyes and saw that he was already dressed and ready to go, looking fresh and smiling at me. "Get up. You have class." I sat up and realized I was sleeping on the sofa, the thin blanket tucked securely around me. I was still a bit disoriented from waking up and yawned twice before realizing Vesper was laughing. "What are you laughing at?" I placed my feet on the floor, searching for my slippers. My words came out with a heavy nasal tone. He smoothed my hair. "Laughing at you. You're already 20, but you haven't changed at all since you were a kid." I gave him a withering look. We had breakfast at the restaurant downstairs. Vesper held a bag of things he'd bought for me the previous night in one hand and wheeled a black suitcase with the other as we walked to the underground parking garage. Liam and another driver had already brought the car around. They dropped me off at the school gate. I still had over half an hour before class, but Vesper's flight was imminent. He simply said he'd come to see me often when he had time, and then we had to say goodbye. For the next 2 years of university, Vesper and I continued our somewhat casual relationship. He did, as he'd said, come to see me whenever he had a business trip nearby or a brief moment of free time. I also, on certain special occasions, learned his location from his assistant and went to see him. Although we were in a long-distance relationship, I didn't feel any need to worry. Perhaps because I'd known him since childhood at the end Of the day, he remained an exceptionally outstanding person in my mind. Although I'd never dated anyone else, I trusted him unconditionally. During those 2 years, like any other couple, we traveled to different places during our holidays, used Vesper's work privileges to chase after our favorite stars, and went with him to watch the various sporting events. He enjoyed. I considered my life to be as full as it had always been, but there was definitely a different flavor, like adding the finishing touch to a painting, enhancing a brocade with flowers, adding new colors. Of course, Vesper and I had our disagreements. I'd even cried from being angry with him. But looking back, none of them seemed like a big deal. We talked about it afterward, realizing that small frictions in life were unavoidable. Vesper, at that time, said somewhat offhandedly that he would always defer to me, that he knew me better than anyone. I refused. I said that our relationship should be based on equality. Although he usually took care of me and accommodated me more, I was also making an effort. We should understand each other, and it shouldn't always be him stepping back. The next time we had a disagreement, we should try to see things from each other's perspective, identify the root cause, and then resolve it. Whoever was at fault was at fault. I said I didn't want him to always give in to me. He smiled and kissed me, saying, "So mature." Then I kicked him, telling him I was serious and he should be serious too. He retracted his smile, pulled my hand, and said, "Okay." He said he wasn't yielding to me because I was younger or because I was a girl, but because I was the person he loved. He wanted to indulge me, but he would always respect my thoughts. Once, while having dinner with him and some of his friends, I was, as usual, just using my mouth for eating and silently listening to them talk. I'd gradually learned to understand most of their conversations after listening to them so many times. That time, one of his friends suddenly brought up the topic of marriage, asking when Vesper and I were going to make it official. I didn't understand. At first, Vesper put a piece of green vegetable on my plate and said casually, "Let's talk about it after she graduates. She's still a student." I suddenly realized he was asking when we were going to get married. I choked and Vesper laughed, patting my back theatrically while propping his chin on his hand, telling me to eat slowly. But that guy wouldn't give up. After I'd recovered, he started questioning me again. "Little sister-in-law, when do you want to get hitched with our brother Blackwood?" Vesper was still smiling. "Why are you teasing her?" I silently calculated our ages. I would graduate at 22. Vesper would be 28. If we waited any longer, he'd be approaching 30. I couldn't imagine it. So I said, "After graduation. Once I find a job." Then, everyone at the table seemed to be suppressing laughter. I didn't understand what was so funny. I looked at Vesper, puzzled. He rested his hand on the back of my chair, hooked his finger under my chin, but didn't say anything. I whispered, asking him what they were laughing at. "They're laughing because you're cute," he said perfunctorily. I knocked his hand away. "I don't understand the humor of you old people." Right after I finished university, the day after the graduation ceremony, Vesper brought me back home. But I hadn't get the chance to fulfill my wish of finding a job because I tested into graduate school during my junior year with some friends. I chose a university near my hometown. I would continue to be a student, however. That year, Vesper and I got married. From my father's arm, I placed my hand in his. It was late summer, early autumn, a gentle breeze blew. The man held my hand, smiling brightly, and led me slowly up the steps.